What's up everybody, this is the Snack Man here, and today we're going to be talking about the new Pokemon games. Okay, I'll put the brakes in the Actman impersonations. Maybe. Anyway, with another year we get another Pokemon game. Or two, or three if you want to count them that way. I've already talked about Legends Arceus before, and in short, I think it's a pretty solid game that stands well enough on its own, and also brings me hope for the future of the series. Pokémon Scarlet Violet on the other hand, well, for now I'll just say they didn't leave me as hopeful as Legends Arceus did. While it's reasonable to bring up comparisons with the older games, I'm going to remain focused on Scarlet and Violet for this video. Even with Legends Arceus being released within the same year, I want to analyze how well the new games hold up on their own merits without any bias, despite how much most of us feel that they're a step back from the game we got months prior. And speaking of bias, I'll be upfront on my feelings towards Pokemon as a series. I absolutely love the Pokemon games since I was a wee lad. I've finished every mainline entry with my favorites being Black and White, yes I'm one of those people, and I also literally caught them all. That being said, I'm not here to spew toxic positivity or white knight for Game Freak, nor am I going to mercilessly dunk on these games, as fun as it may be. I'm here to give my thoughts on Scarlet and Violet from my own perspective, and also later on try to figure out why expectations weren't met. So enough babbling, vamos!
Vamos, come on!
Let's start with, well, the start. For this playthrough I decided to go with Violet because
prehistoric stuff is lame. Everybody knows the future's where it's at.
the character code is pretty good, decent amount of options and whatnot. The only issue I have is that the player character themselves give me this uncanny vibe, and apparently I'm not alone on that. I don't know why, maybe it's the eyes? So I tried to make a goofy looking clown to make myself feel less creeped out.
It did not go well. What the hell is it?
Starting the file, we get greeted with a cheap looking intro with still images in-engine, silly looking animations, no voice acting, nothing visually interesting, and granted it's brief with the screen going dark as well, you can see the actors go into a T-pose. I guess when they said they welcome you with open arms, they literally meant that. The part where the box legendary is flying is fine enough, even if you can pick apart details such as the embarrassing texture draw distance and the floating birds. The dino thing crashes. You talk to some guy who gives you a starter. I chose Quaxly, and yes, I already know that it turns from bad to catastrophically worse. Sorry if you like Quaxly and its evolutions, but I truly feel for anyone picking Quaxly unaware of what it would become. I reckon that all the prediction fan art looks far better than what we got. But enough about the duck. You fight your neighbor in her backyard, and she unceremoniously gives you the Pokédex in the form of a smartphone app.
Get Wi-Fi anywhere you go.
Yeah, do some stuff, fall off a cliff and somehow don't get your arms ripped off, find a robo-lizard, give it a sandwich instead of modern medicine, meet some guy, fight him, and take a look at all the beautiful nature. Her words, not mine. Do a bunch of school stuff and now we're free to explore. And it only took an hour and a half, give or take. The opening does a decent job of introducing characters, explaining gameplay elements, and giving a small taste of exploration. Some say it drags on too long, and yeah, I guess it might. It's only a small portion of the game though, so not a big deal in my opinion. But since the game lets go of your hand at this point, I may as well talk about what I think works in this game, starting with the open world. The open world works because it's a large landscape that gives the player agency to do what they want, and travel to each locale seamlessly. For the most part. For real though, it really is nice to have this kind of freedom in a Pokemon game without being shackled to a linear path. Story beats are still cohesive, even though the activities that are tied to each story are fragmented across the map. There's a good ratio of towns and wild areas, meaning that the world feels vast and wild without feeling isolating and dead. And that's it. That's everything nice I have to say about the open world. Picnics are pretty neat. It's a cute little distraction where you can spend some time with your monster buddies, make a sandwich with a really disturbing cutscene, and in my case it bugged out and became even more weird. You can even wash your Pokemon. Not you. Washing raises friendship as well as making your Pokemon clean and cute, just like in Nintendogs. The updated textures on the Pokemon look really good, and I much prefer this over the minimalist textures with black lines in previous titles. Seeing fur, scales, and metal on the Pokemon adds more details and realism, which is very much welcome. Some quality of life features were added, such as the Let's Go thing, which is quite janky, but still works. And auto heal is really fast and convenient, and I've even found myself using it even though the Poké Center is just meters away from me. I really enjoyed the Titan storyline, much more so than the other two. Helping out Arven heal up my Mabostiff felt just as rewarding as the move unlocks for the ride Pokemon. It's a touching story, and I always felt motivated to progress through it. The Team Star one was okay. I know it has a theme of bullying, which is a serious real-world issue, but I'm sorry, I just don't really care much about Team Star. The final act was pretty cool. I like how all three characters joined together for a Xenoblade Chronicles moment.
Oh yeah, baby! Oh yeah! Ah!
And the battle with the professor was quite the spectacle, and a fitting end to the main story. Terrestrializing is a fairly good mechanic as it can add more strategy to battles, but it's probably best suited for competitive battles or if you're in a pinch, because in my experience, I almost never use it to get through the main story. The raid ends are a neat idea, but the 5 and 6 star ones aren't as fun because while solo you have to use certain Pokemon with certain setups, and even then it can be a slog to get through. I've never tried a raid online, but I hear from others that it can be even more difficult due to factors like coordination troubles and the timer going down for each player getting knocked out. The rewards are great, so it can be worth your time. I seem to be quite alone on this one, but I reckon that the music is just okay. There are a few tracks that I like, but the rest just sounds pretty average. Or mid, if you will. But I see that everyone else loves the music, so you may like it more than I. Continuing on with other stuff I think is just fine are the characters. I didn't find any particular characters as bad, but I only liked a handful of them. Them being Arvin for being a good friend and having the deepest backstory. Larry, because while we don't see him much, he left a strong impression, as his lax nature really vibes with me. Now I want to start. And I also like the director Clavel due to him being kind of with you since the start, and he genuinely cares for you and the rest of the students. Finally, the core game of battling and catching works like it has the past 2.5 decades. Whether you like it still or are tired of it, the main formula here is fully functional as intended. Now there's definitely room for debate as to whether the battles and catching are outdated by now, but I won't get into that. Overall, I think this game ticks all the boxes on the fundamentals of what makes a game complete enough, whether it excels in some aspects or it just does the bare minimum. The performance and visuals are utterly shocking, and it's probably the first thing you hear about Scarlet and Violet, so I'll make this very quick. The visuals are embarrassingly bad and the performance is worse. You may even get a crash here and there like I did. No matter what the reason is, valid or not, these games deserve no sympathy in this area. With that being said, there is still enjoyment to be had. Some are more tolerant than others in regards to the performance, so there's no need to feel wrong for not being bothered by it or not being able to put up with it. Now for what I think are some of the weaker parts of Scarlet and Violet. So again, there's no voice acting. It's not a massive deal because the gameplay cutscenes can do fine without it, but for the bigger scenes, while only a few, looks and sounds off. I saw a video of someone getting some friends together to voice some of the scenes, and honestly I think they did a pretty great job. I'll show a couple clips here.
Are you these three's trainer?
Not quite.
Huh?
They have yet to make their choice, you see.
You did your best, Bud.
Bud! I know, Bud. Me too.
So I would concur that adding voice acting would greatly benefit the cutscenes because they become more engaging, or at the very least it takes away any awkwardness. Clothing options are still a thing, and there's a variety of accessories and stuff to customize your appearance to your liking. What people are not happy about is that you can't change the tops and bottoms, as you're always forced to wear the school uniform. Thematically it makes sense because you're a student, and I guess this entire adventure takes place during school hours or something, but it's still a bit disappointing that you're stuck with the dorky clothes. But this didn't stop me from trying to make my character look as swagged out as possible.
Bitch, I wake up, no stylist. Fresh as fuck, I put it on up, I did this shit.
As for story stuff, the entirety of the gym challenge and becoming champion was just flat out dull to me. There's nothing much to the gyms and their leaders, you just go to them, beat them up and grab a badge and a pick. And Victory Road is literally just a short hike that's guarded by a kid with a level 14 Meowth and some other guy near the top. It doesn't deserve the name Victory Road. The Elite Four segment was also plain and unimpressive. Visually, there's nothing flashy, and the battles themselves feel like regular gym battles. And the champion Gita wasn't memorable at all. I even had to look up her name just now while I'm typing this because she was so forgettable to me. Admittedly, I did kind of like how each Elite Four member is introduced and how they hang around to make comments or congratulate you. Now, I'm likely to get flamed for this, but what I was disappointed the most with about the gym challenge was your rival Nemona. I haven't studied on what makes good fictional writing, but it is my opinion that Nemona is a badly written character. I mean, all she ever talks about is Pokemon battles, nothing else. She's the epitome of a one-note character. Even during the post-game where you get these bonus scenes with the three main characters, nothing happens with her. Penny's is about having faith in her friends that they'll be able to continue their school life happily, and Arvin's is about setting aside his parents' legacy to pursue his own goals in life. Meanwhile, Nemona is sad because she's so strong that no one other than you wants to battle her.
Oh, boo-hoo! Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
I did some looking online to see if maybe others agree with me, but I seem to be very much alone on this one, as the websites Twinfinite, Screen Rant, The Gamer, and CBR all have high praise for Nemona, with Twinfinite really being the only one that gives an actual explanation on why they like her so much. And yes, I did look elsewhere other than journalist websites to see what the fans think, but I learned the hard way that you should never go to Reddit to look for sincere opinions on Pokemon characters. To be fair, however, not everyone in that post was a societal deviant, as you can see here. According to this person, the the folks on Twitter might have different thoughts, but Dink My Daddy reminded me that I shouldn't even bother going there. Of course, if you think Nemona's a great character, that's totally fine, and to be clear, I like Nemona, but I don't think she's a well-written character, which made me care less about the whole becoming champion storyline. Can you at least sort of see where I'm coming from?
Word, you know what I mean?
For the rest of this segment, I want to focus on the game world because while it functions as an open world, arguably, it certainly isn't what we'd expect from a full-price game published by Nintendo. Now obviously the first part you see of the world is the visuals themselves, which is complete donkey doo-doo. I'm not going to repeat myself from earlier because I'm not just talking about the textures, I mean the geometry itself. It is so basic that if you dipped it in industrial grade acid, you'd balance the pH. The mountain formations are too unrealistic, and the way things are rounded out looks so unnaturally sharp and simple. Most of the towns look so plain and blocky with not enough variation to set them apart from one another, with a few exceptions. I mean, they look like a Minecraft village. The towns don't house much either, just NPCs that aren't even worth approaching, a gym if it has one, and buildings that you can't enter, even all the stores. Not counting the ice cream stands. There's no special hidden areas or secrets that come from exploring, and no, I'm not accepting those hole-in-the-walls that have Pokemon that you can just find elsewhere as special areas. Pretty much the only thing that prevents you from just going in a straight line to each town is the Pokemon, as you'd likely want to check out what's spawning so you can train up, fill your decks, or find a new team member. I think that what gets people confused about when they hear others saying good things about the open world, because really there's nothing out there besides the Pokemon interactions. Yes, there are NPCs, but all of them initiate a Pokemon battle, and there's raid dens too, but I'm sure you don't need me to tell you what you're going to find in those things. Going for the legendaries are a little more special because again it's all for the reward, which is a legendary, but it requires you to explore and interact with the world itself, albeit at a basic level. So yeah, catching and battling Pokemon is a nice gameplay loop, but that's the only meaningful thing that the game world has to offer. Something that is being praised by everyone about the world is that you're free to choose what story quests to do in a non-linear order. There is a big asterisk to the freedom and choice bit because what it actually is a limited amount of options, with the rest of the activities only being opened up to you after you finish certain tasks in the first few areas. And you're also expected to have your team at a certain level with each story mission, so you can't just simply waltz over to a late game area because you'll be blocked off or need a train to be able to keep up. This is like George Orwell's book, 1984. My first go at the game mainly followed the proper completion order, but for this playthrough I wanted to see what it'd be like if I went to the halfway point from the start. So I went off on my way to the normal gym, but hit a roadblock. All it took was one jump, which is quite easy, and I didn't run into any more trouble. With me, I wanted a normal gym fight, no pun intended, so instead of using X items or taking advantage of certain moves and abilities, I trained up my team to be on par with Larry. This was before I learned that the best way to level up is to use EXP candies from the raid dens. So I did it the old-fashioned way of just battling wild Pokemon and gradually moving up to each area. This took me approximately 5 or so episodes of the Sopranos to get my team ready. The battle with Larry went smoothly and nothing game-breaking happened afterwards. But just as I expected, the 10 challenges below the normal gym in the recommended order was a piece of cake. Honestly, it just wasn't much fun for me at that point because I would just trample over everyone with little resistance. Eventually things started to catch up with me as I moved back into the late game areas, and because I was doing a bit more of a rush playthrough, I did have to go back and do some grinding. No biggie, I'll just watch a bit more of Sopranos while training and get back to the story.
What is with you, Tony? This whole week, you're like an alien life form among us.
No. Okay, back to the game and now everything's fine. So for my personal experience, starting with the high level activity first wasn't all that exciting for me, and it only hindered my enjoyment for the gyms and stuff that were of the lower level. That was just me though. I also want to talk about a couple of other people that did something similar to me, but instead went to the 8th gym. Those being Papa C and Velicify. First in Velicify's video, the steps he took was to do the backwards jump trick to get to a later area, catch a high level Dugtrio to use in the raids, catch a Drifloon, abused the Aftermath ability to beat the Titans, and climbed to the 8th gym. He never actually showed him beating the gym, but I guess his point was more so that it's possible to get there from the start. He ends with his opinion on the challenge and level scaling.
And pardon my language, but idiots will say,
but without gym scaling, then the game's boring and easy.
It's not easy to get to that point! I was struggling out there! You front load the work into a grand challenge instead of hitting that point after the 3rd gym where now you're permanently over leveled for the rest of the game, and then it's easy anyways.
So it really sounds like he had a ton of fun doing it the unconventional way, and honestly more power to him. I like how he says that each person has different playstyles and there's no wrong way to go about it. As for Papa C, his strategy had some overlap with Velicify's, in which he caught a high level wild Pokemon to use in raids to get EXP candies. He combined that with doing the Chansey XP farm to get his team's levels high enough to beat Grusha. He also says his thoughts at the end of the video, which sort of aligns with how things turned out with me.
This should make the rest of the gyms and the rest of the game really easy since we're already at such a high level and have such little things actually completed in the game. I don't know why anybody would ever want to do this, but you can do it in under 5 hours if you really wanted to.
Just quickly, a couple small things to note is that these two were able to prepare their teams far more efficiently than I, so it would have required less time to train up than doing it the way I did. And neither of them mentioned anything about the roadblocks that I saw. Were they just not there or something? I don't even know what causes it, but either way, it's still easy to get past. I guess the takeaway here would be that actually getting to the endgame gyms are the real challenge, and what comes after is not as exciting. This would bring up the debate about level scaling, but I'm not going to discuss that because I prefer to keep this about what's here and not what it could have been. To close this, there is some player agency allowed here, and you bought the game, so finish it however you like, no matter how against the grain your choices may be. Yet there's always going to be a proper order of doing it, meaning that if you stray from this path, your experience won't be consistent. So what went wrong? Well, I'm not going to play internet detective here because I'm not bright, and the only tool at my disposal is a device that can search the web. I don't have any unique wisdom or insight, so all I can do is make a guess, which I won't do. Others have already been vocal on their thoughts and guesses with plenty of overlap with one another, which makes them seem likely to be correct. But without doing an actual investigation with interviews and whatnot, all we can ever do is guess or theorize. And it's not like the higher-ups at Game Freaks or whatever will just come out and say why these games couldn't meet the expectations of fans. What I will do is only be presenting information, and you can draw your own conclusions from that. So let's begin by getting an understanding of Game Freak's situation. Game Freak, as of 2022, has under 200 employees according to Wikipedia. In a Nintendo Life article, it was revealed that Legends Arceus started development in 2018, with Gen 9 starting in 2019, during an interview at CDC 2022. And in this Game Rant article, it states as a fact that Game Freak grew large enough to split the development into 2 teams to be able to make both games. I found an interview on Polygon about Sword and Shield's development, and even though it's not Gen 9, I thought it'd be worth noting here. The interviewer asked Omori and Masuda about them, stating in another interview that there was 1,000 people who worked in the game. Omori clarified that the core development team was actually around 200 people, with the rest being responsible for marketing, translations, and other stuff. During that time, there was a larger amount of staff than Game Freak was used to. In regards to this, they never said that they had trouble handling a larger team, but they did say it was a lot more complicated. I couldn't find any similar interview talking about Gen 9 specifically, so I can't say for sure how much the development team differed between Gen 8 and 9. And to be very honest with you, I don't want to sit through the credits counting each individual while listening to Bread Sheeran. Just wanted to point out a couple of things about Junichi Masuda that probably have no correlation, but I still feel like I should share. In a video by Did You Know Gaming, there was a part where they mentioned the team sizes of past games.
But according to official figures by Game Freak, they expanded their team size by 50% when they transitioned from 2D to 3D. Black and White 2 and Heart Gold Soul Silver were primarily made by 20 devs or less.
So Game Freak / Masuda must have been much more accustomed to creating with a small team, with the amount of devs growing by at least 2 times since the DS/3DS era. Again, not trying to twist his words by saying he's not good at managing a large team, just that he finds it to be complex and he prefers smaller teams. Another thing that probably means nothing in the grand scheme is that Masuda announced that he stepped down as managing director on June 1st, 2022, which is before Gen 9 came out. I know in the credits he's mainly listed as a composer, but I spotted in the actual game credits that he was a supervisor. I don't know any details about all that, but just in case, I'm putting it here. This also may have nothing to do with anything, but in 2020, during development of Gen 9, Game Freak relocated to another building. Maybe development wasn't impacted, but I imagine progress was halted at least by a little bit by the big move. Scarlet and Violet appears to never have been regarded as finished in Nintendo's eyes, at least after it came out. As on the support website they give an apology. I tried looking online to see if at any point anyone ever said something about the game going gold, but all I could see was that there was a glitch that turns Miridon gold. Now everyone likes to compare Game Freak with other development studios, so I may as well do a bit of that here. A couple Western studios I picked out was Bethesda, which as of 2021 has over 420 employees, and of course they're known for making big open world titles. When Rockstar made GTA 5, they had a team of around 1,000 employees over several years. Not sure if I should even bother giving these examples, but I guess others do it to give an idea of how much time and people is needed for ambitious projects. One comparison that I think is worth mentioning is the development of Breath of the Wild, because it's an open world game published by Nintendo on the Switch, just like Scarlet and Violet. Breath of the Wild's dev team started small but grew to 300, with 100 of them being called in from Monolith Soft for extra help. It took 5 years to make, and they even had a party for it going gold. Aonuma was interviewed and he said one of the problems they faced was managing a large team. And in that same interview, he said that he asked for more time to work on the game, which in turn brought multiple delays. So it really sounds like Breath of the Wild was given as much time and staff as needed. This is popular speculation, but it's believed that Pokemon games are forced to release by certain deadlines to be able to keep up with the merch, trading cards, and TV shows. so it's possible that Game Freak aren't given the luxury of asking for more time to work on the games. It's pointed out every new release of Pokemon nowadays that Pokemon is the best-selling media franchise, and yes, a big portion of sales come from the games, even beating colossal IPs like GTA and Call of Duty. But the biggest moneymaker when it comes to Pokemon is the merchandise. As you can see here, the revenue of the games don't even come close. And what do you think is easier to make? Video games or trading cards and merch? So it's no wonder why people assume that Game Freak doesn't put much money in the games, because they only need them just to exist to sell other stuff. Speaking of finances, how much did it cost to make Gen 9? I don't know, and no one else online knows either. Nintendo is very tight-lipped when it comes to revealing the budget of their games. I couldn't even find one for Breath of the Wild to give an idea or something. Also, just one thing about the whole best-selling franchise thing is that this picture is not recent, and while it may not be 100% accurate, Wikipedia states that Winnie the Pooh has beaten out Pokemon. Yeah, always love to see the underdog win. And also, what is this? And so, with everything I just said about Game Freak, all of it comes together and equals a game with mixed or average reviews from critics and 10 million copies sold worldwide within 3 days. Yeah. So why do these games sell so stupidly well? I don't know, why are you asking me? It's safe to say that it's predominantly a casual audience that buys them over the hardcore crowd, because casuals don't care about things like performance, difficulty, deep narratives, and complex mechanics, unlike the enthusiasts. I don't have exact figures to back that up, but it makes at least a bit of sense.
You know what I mean?
As for why I personally buy them, is because I love the whole monster taming and collecting aspects of these games. I'm aware that by now there are a lot of these kind of games in the market, but I just like how the monsters are handled in Pokemon, with there being a ton of factors making them unique and valuable to the individual. So all it takes is pretty much the core mechanics of Pokemon for me to keep buying them, with anything else being appreciated but not too necessary. That's not to say that I wouldn't like Pokemon games to become an objectively fantastic experience being loved unanimously by all, because I really want that. But that's just me. I have no idea why you or anyone else buys them, yet I do know that people buy anything for whatever reason, be it sensible or more personal. To finish this whole thing up, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet sold very well but has mixed reactions among players. The game has undisputable flaws such as coarse environmental assets, an open world that's nothing special, and atrocious performance. However, it's definitely possible for you to still have a good time, as there are likable qualities in Scarlet and Violet. Liking these games does not make you compliant to its faults, and no one is wrong in praising or criticizing Scarlet and Violet. It really is up to you whether you like or dislike this game, and you shouldn't let others make you feel wrong for having your own personal opinions. Going forward, I would like to see Game Freak take a different approach in the development of Pokemon games. There's no need for yearly releases, as fans still play the old games, even going back to the original Red and Blue. If more time is needed for Game Freak to deliver a top quality product, then by all means take the extra time. Even Call of Duty is taking a break. Consolidate the dev team to avoid stretching them thin to release a new game each year, and keep the team to a size that's manageable. It's fine to aim high, but maybe Game Freak should focus on their strengths before growing too quickly. I just want to pull up a quote I got from Blaine's where he says, "Both the customer's expectations and the company's ambitions are moving way too fast for their actual abilities." This is one of the most reasonable takes I've seen, and to me sounds about right. All I'm saying is maybe throwing more money and bodies at the games isn't the solution here.
You know what I mean? Word, you know what I mean?
Of course, the fans can wait, but perhaps all the business folk like investors, publishers, and such prefer to keep it all on a packed and timely schedule. For unselfish reasons, I'm sure. I know there's not much point to pointing fingers here, but it remains that a lot of people were disappointed with Gen 9. As I'm making this, Pokemon Day is coming up, so maybe some updates may be on the way to make things better. Anyway, as for the future of this franchise, whatever happens, happens. No need to stress about something we have little influence over, but here's hoping for a bright one. Alright everyone, that's all I've got for today. This is the Snack Man, signing out. Peace!